Hello everyone, welcome back to the Names Your Business Show. My name is Chris Pastrana, and today, very special guest, my friend Elliot Axelman from Liberty Block. How's it going?
Excellent, how are you?
Good. So, for those who don't know who you are, because, we're both pretty small shows, explain a little bit about Liberty Block.
So, the Liberty Block is evolving. We're evolving right now.
Okay.
And we're still really a fledgling, trying to find our own identity, I suppose. It began, I would say, a year and a half ago in Southwest Connecticut, in a studio called WGCH Studio on 1490 AM. And I kind of lucked into it, kind of a coincidence. I knew a libertarian. He was doing a radio show once a week. It was called Mr. EDU. It was Mark Stewart Greenstein. He's been an educator. He's a lawyer, but he's an educator, tutor for like 30 years. And he had a show called Mr. EDU. And as a libertarian, the second half of his show would be called Liberty Block. Just randomly, I think he was with me, because he wanted to have on like a libertarian guest on the second half of the show every week.
Yeah.
It was Mr. EDU about education and tutoring and studying for college SATs and all that stuff. And the second half hour was pretty libertarian. He called it the Liberty Block. And he kind of just named it that randomly, the second segment. I was with him on an interview one day because he wanted to talk to a libertarian from New York, because the Southwest Connecticut studio broadcasted to like Southwest Connecticut, but also Westchester County, Bronx, and some of Queens. So it was really New York and Connecticut show. And he had me on, and he just came back from break and said, "Hi, welcome to the Liberty Block, the second part of the show. And I have Elliot Axelman with me, and I was a guest on the show, and it was great. We spoke about, I think, education and about the city government agencies in New York, and it was great. And I just, ragged all over the government agencies in New York. And he said, it was great, come back. And I came back in a few weeks. And then he said he's going to be off 1 week and asked if I wanted to fill in. And it went pretty well. I mean, I was terrified. I asked if I could ask my brother to co-host with me to make it easier. And we did, and it was great. It was fantastic. And then after a few weeks, he eventually handed off the show to me. And then I did 10 weeks there, and then I moved here.
Okay.
So I kind of did 10 weeks, and it was, as you could imagine, some of the most fun I've ever had.
Yeah.
Some producer must not have known me, because he let me get behind a mic and gave me the sound engineer and gave me all the resources of WGCH Studio to do a show for 1 hour every week for 10 weeks. And I did whatever I wanted. I didn't curse. I tried not to sound too crazy anarchist, but I did really whatever I wanted for that full hour. And so before I started the show, I was friends with Mark Stewart, and he was a handoff, so I filled in for him as a guest host once or twice or three times. Then he said eventually he's going to hand it off to me, and we knew, and he said, hey, as I hand it off and I continue my other libertarian stuff, he's running for governor now in Connecticut. He's doing a whole campaign. Yeah. Running as a Democrat, though, I think, but because it's Connecticut. But he's doing his own thing, so he was handing it off to me. He said, let's create a website. That way, when we tell our friends to listen to the show, if they can't listen from like that 6 to 7 p.m. hour, they can listen online somewhere. And at this point, I knew nothing about IT. I still know nothing about tech or websites, but I've learned a little bit over the years because I'm very low tech. But he decided, let's create a website so you can at least have somewhere to maybe host the audio of the show after you download it so friends can listen. So I created libertyblock.com. I just went on Wix and just created a website and just built over the last year and a half. And we hosted all the audio from the shows. Yeah. And we put it up there, and then I started writing, and I realized, I like writing, and I wrote a few articles about New York City, the budget. One of my first articles, it was kind of a pretty funny, at least I thought it was pretty funny, an article about like my 10 favorite items on the New York City budget, because the budget for, I guess, 2017 was coming out for New York City, or maybe 2016 was coming out for New York City. And at this point, it was like $73 billion budget. Yeah. Then I went to $86 billion, and this year, 2018, it's going to be right around $100 billion. Wow. For New York City budget.
Wow.
So that's New York City. It's got 8 million people. For reference, New Hampshire, which has 1.3 million people, the budget is $6 billion a year. So we have a fifth or a sixth amount of people, but our budget is not even close to a tenth. It's like the 20th, the budget of New York City. So incredible. But you'd think for New York City, they're spending $100 billion. They'd have the best hospitals, the best roads, the best city governments. If you want to ask me how good the city governments are, how good the roads are in New York City, you know how many times my brother has not only popped a tire, but broken an axle because the roads are so, like, pretty much like the moon. Horrible craters in the roads there. They also operate, I believe, 11 hospitals. New York City government operates. If you ask any medic, anyone in New York who knows hospitals, they'll tell you, ask them what the worst hospital is. Ask them what the worst 11 hospitals are. They'll name you those hospitals run by the government. It's amazing. So anyway, I wrote this article, one of my first articles that I put up on Liberty Block, as well as the audio to supplement it with some blogging, like some articles, was some of the most ridiculous budget items. I wrote, they're spending however many hundreds of millions on the diversity office, the diversity department of New York City.
Yeah.
I'm like, come on, diversity is great, but New York City, we are diverse. We are the most diverse city. We don't need hundreds of $1 million for an agency to, improve, diversity. So I wrote about that. I wrote about the education department. I assume they spend, I forget, probably a few billion on the education department in New York City, which is the worst in the country, I believe, the worst education numbers. Their own people, CUNY, SUNY, their own government has said that like 55% or so of people coming out of after high school, like 55% are still not college ready.
Yeah.
Out of the New York City public school system. So I wrote about that. I wrote about the what is it, the TLC, the Taxi Limousine Commission, that controls all the taxis and everything.
Yeah.
That's also, I think, a few $100 million or a few $1 billion a year budget. It's incredible. Sanitation, so the garbage pickup, it's $2 billion a year budget, just about. FDNY is $2 billion. NYPD is $5 billion. $5 billion a year budget. That's almost the whole budget for our state.
Yeah.
So I wrote about that, and I kind of wrote it in an interesting way, like giving out superlatives.
Yeah.
So I wrote like most mafia budget, and I like most mafia like budget. And I gave it to like the TLC, which is the mafia, or maybe I gave it to sanitation or the teachers department. So I gave like most ironic budget and like the diversity stuff, and most like libertarian budget, like talking about roads, because the DOT is the DOT budget of New York City is about $1 billion a year also. It's like 900 some million then. Wow. So I wrote, that was one of my first articles. So I put that on the site as well, and I started writing more, and I realized the more I write, the better I get, the more comfortable I get. So I ended up writing a fair amount of articles while I was doing the show once a week as well. I would have on a guest. I had Larry Sharp. I had a few other guests. I actually had the honor of having Keith Smith on as a guest. He's the guy, a doctor who created the Surgery Center of Oklahoma.
Okay.
So it was like one of the first kind of like free market alternative cash only surgeries. They list the prices on the site.
Wow.
So he started like 20 years ago, and they list all the prices for many procedures, surgical procedures, on their site, and they don't take insurance. It's just cash, and they do fantastically well, and it's pure free market stuff and very transparent because everyone knows the prices. And this guy, Keith Smith, who was the founder, who's an anesthesiologist, and he hired surgeons, so they all work together. He goes around being on CNBC, on Stossel, on Fox, on this, on CBS, all the time. So I emailed him and said, hey, I'm a medic, I have a show, I love it, I love the free market stuff, would you come on the show? And he's like, yeah, that'll be fun. So he came on the show. I gave him a whole hour one week. So I had on some amazing guests. So I had him, I had a bunch of other libertarian guests, and I kind of did the show myself, had my brother on, I had some other friends on, so it was pretty awesome. And after 10 weeks, I was preparing to move to New Hampshire, and I'm like, I'm not going to keep driving to Connecticut to do it.
Yeah. So
since the movement to New Hampshire a year ago, it's kind of transformed, the site has transformed more into primarily articles. I'm writing between 1 and 10 articles a month. It's random because I'm busy, and it depends what happens. So if there's a really bad bill that I think might pass, like last year, House Bill 628, the FMLI bill, I read the bill and I thought, this could pass because it has the keyword, it has for the children.
Yeah.
So I realized it could pass, so I figure I got to write about it. So we wrote an article about that, and then following up on that, we wrote 5 or 10 more articles on that. Yeah. And a few other representatives wrote articles on that as well. So now we're really focused on mostly articles, but the last few weeks I'm trying to get back to doing a show once a week.
Yeah.
Because it was so fun, and it's good. It's different to talk to people with a video. And
yeah.
So the last 5 or 10 weeks we're doing every Thursday evening, 7 p.m., just calling it the Liberty Block Live because we're on Facebook Live. And just kind of, again, we're kind of trying to find our own identity and see what Liberty Block is.
Yeah.
All I know is that it's the goal would be to educate people in New Hampshire enough to give them the tools and resources they need to help them keep New Hampshire the freest state in the country.
Yeah. So this is always a fun conversation to get into. So, because you'd think people want to be free, and they'd want
you'd think
all of this really cool stuff that they can get themselves and they can do for themselves. But why do you think that constantly fails?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. It's very interesting philosophically to talk about it. My father, who worked in psychotherapy for decades, he has some theories about people, and eventually he's realized, and he told me, and I'm starting to think he's right, the people don't want freedom. Some people say freedom, with more freedom comes more responsibility, because you have more autonomy, more independence. So the less taxes and socialism and government programs there are taking care of you, babying you, holding your hand, telling you what to do, the more you have to go out there and kind of do it yourself. And some people might be afraid of that. And again, people like us might want that responsibility. And again, it's more freedom, but it's more responsibility, and it means we have more discretion, and some people might not be prepared for that or don't want to handle it. They have to go out there and maybe buy insurance on their own. If you have Medicare for all, it's easy, it's simple. Everyone has Medicare. Me, I have to go out there and find a job with insurance or buy insurance on my own, and that could be complicated. And I understand, because right now health insurance is the most complicated thing in the world. Being in emergency medicine for 7 years, I still almost know nothing about health insurance because it's so complicated, and the doctors don't, and the insurance people don't.
Yeah.
It's very complicated. So people don't want to handle that. They want Medicare for all. It's simple. It sounds fair. It sounds equal. Makes you feel good, like you're a good socialist, and it's simple. So people, I think they don't want it, but on the other hand, if I wanted to, I can make the argument that people do want freedom. If you were to go personally, and I don't like polls because a lot can go wrong in a poll, but if you were to personally ask all 320 million individuals in the U.S., do you want freedom? And ask them 10 questions. Ask them, do you want more or less freedom? Most of them would say they want more freedom than they have now. If you ask them, do you want to keep more of your hard-earned income? Most of them would say they want to keep more, right? Yeah. You know it. No one walks around saying, I want to pay more taxes. Very, very, very few, very hard left Dems, socialists, Democrats, communists. Very few people, I've heard like 5 in my whole life, say they want to pay more taxes. People want to keep more of their money. People want freedom. Most people, maybe 50, 70, 80% of the country wants to have freedom to defend themselves with any weapon they want. Most people want property rights. They want to be able to build in their own house. Zoning laws. I could do a whole hour on zoning laws. It's disgusting. I went to Home Depot yesterday saying I want to build. We have a 1-car garage. I want a 2-car garage. I can't build another garage, but I was thinking maybe a canopy to protect the second car from the snow and stuff. It would help a little bit. And I went to Home Depot and said, hey, what would be the best materials? Maybe do you have an expert here to consult with? And he's like, you know what? Why don't you talk to your city council first about which materials are legal for building on your own property? And I'm like, wait, we're talking about my own property.
Yeah.
I should be able to build whatever I want. And if you come on my property, you know what property rights meant 100 years ago. It means get off my property or you get to kill them. So that's what property rights used to mean 100 years ago. But now, government regulators, like there was some state rep in maybe Laconia, somewhere in Belknap County, who was living in maybe his RV, living in his house, and it's all illegal. No, illegal because of zoning laws and all that. You can only live where we say you can live. So if you ask most of the country individually, do you want more property rights? Do you want to be able to build a shelf in your house or a garage in the back of your house or a shed without the government giving you permission? Most would say yes. Mm-hmm. So I think in general, most people in the country, probably 80-90% would want what we would describe as libertarian values. But what happens between what they desire and the legislation, there's a lot between that, right?
Yeah.
So they elect someone, and they kind of get, 2 parties. They each have a nominee. Who chooses the nominee? Pretty much the big parties choose the nominees, but they make a primary, but they kind of select who they want to win.
Yeah.
And then you have 2 choices. Now you got to choose between a pretty horrible Republican. Yeah, it's a bad nominee, but we'll have a better nominee in 2 years. So let's support him. Let's hold our notes and support him. You have a Democrat who is worse, and the Democrats think the Republican's worse, but they don't like their nominees. The Republicans didn't really like Trump. The Democrats hated Clinton. I had a lot of Democrat friends in New York City. Not a single one of them liked Clinton. There was one girl who lived in upstate New York who was kind of apologizing for Clinton, saying she's not that bad. But everyone I knew hated Clinton, but they liked Bernie. But again, we don't have the nominees that we really want. In one of my articles about how government really doesn't represent us that well, I know it's shocking. They don't represent us. Like our representatives don't represent us. I wrote about how you could win an election. They say when a politician's in office, they say they were duly elected. They won the election, and now they can make laws, right? They won 51% of the vote at least, right? 51% or more, right? No. In a primary, meaning those who actually affirmatively vote for you, in a primary, you could win 2% of the vote of the population, of the voters, and your opponent got like 1.8%, so you win a primary, and then you win the general because of those 2, you're the less crappy one.
Yeah.
Christie, one of the most hated governors in the country, hated by New Jersey, hated by everyone. In a second term, in the primary, you know how many people in New Jersey voted for him? How many registered voters?
No.
I think it was less than 3% of the registered voters voted for him in the primary. Was this a massive primary like Trump, like with 17 candidates and everything? No. 2 people. Of 2 people, it was him and another Republican. And less than 3% of voters, registered voters in New Jersey, I believe, or less than 3% of the people in New Jersey, less than 4% of the registered voters actually affirmatively voted for him. But he won the primary, and then him versus Democrat, they're both bad, let's vote for Christie. That's how he won. He won with like a few people in New Jersey, a few thousand voting for him, and he won, and now he's the governor of New Jersey for 4 years. So that's how it happens. Yeah. And I wrote an article, one of the articles I'm most proud of, about is America a representative republic, or is it an unrepresentative oligarchy? Because it's ruled by a few people. Yeah. And I wrote a whole article. It's one of I think my better articles. I write like 4 massive reasons for why we are not represented. That disconnect between, like you said, the people who probably want freedom and the legislation that's actually enacted.
Yeah, and we're starting to see it more and more where, you know, the people who want freedom, they want to see more freedom, but the people who want freedom, they want more. And I think that's if you're in a particular family, you're more likely to become elected further on down the road. So it's literally turning into
there are dynasties. There are dynasties. Yeah. And if you look at every state, I don't know every state, but probably like in New York, Cuomo, him, I think his brother, his brother's in CNN, but his dad was the governor, I think.
Yeah.
Cuomo.
In Mass, it's like the Kennedys, I want to say.
Yeah.
And then
there's some new news in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Cheney owns Wyoming.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure there's probably a dynasty in every state, or a few families. The Clintons were Arkansas, but New York also, I think. But yeah, there are dynasties. And Bush, Florida, of course, and Texas. But there are definitely dynasties. And again, like, what I love is people say America's a democracy, right? The smart people say, no, I'm smart. It's a republic, right? Because they're so smart. And I'm like, no, it's not a republic. It's not a constitutional republic. We don't have constitutional rights anymore. Because First Amendment, Second Amendment, 10th Amendment, almost non-existent. Fourth Amendment, almost totally non-existent. We don't have the rights anymore of a constitutional republic. We're not really a democracy. We vote. We're more of a democracy, but we're really a democratic oligarchy or an unrepresentative oligarchy because we're ruled by a few people. When it gets down to it, we're probably ruled right now by the president, the speaker, the Senate leaders. So it's 4 or 5 people.
Well, and also the judicial branch, like
and the courts. Yeah.
The courts have been writing a lot of laws lately.
Yeah, so that's another one of them. Yeah, so in the article I write like 4 big reasons why what you and I want doesn't matter. No, but you can vote. You get 1 vote. No, it doesn't matter, dude. It really doesn't matter. Because the courts can write laws on a city and state and federal level. They can really write laws, and we see it increasingly over hundreds of years. But go back to 1800, 1810 with Marbury versus Madison, where the Supreme Court kind of said, well, we can kind of, rule that we don't have the authority to rule something, so let it be because we want to, pass the buck. So they can kind of already start, giving themselves more powers, and that's the problem with the courts. So it's the courts, it's the actual voting stuff, and there are a few other massive reasons I bring up in the article for why it doesn't really matter what we want. It doesn't matter how we vote. We're not a democratic republic. We're not a constitutional republic. We are ruled by a few people. Those who think that they can change, right now Trump is running the country. I think Schumer runs the Senate, but a few people. It's probably Schumer, Pelosi, maybe McConnell, and Trump, and a few others running the country right now. It is what it is. People who think they can change that, they can't really. And there might even be people, more powerful than them running behind the scenes. But we can't change it. And that's why I want to focus on New Hampshire so much. Concord is so close to us. We're far from D.C. Our senators, Hassan, Shaheen, we can't get to them. They're not accessible.
Yeah.
And they're in D.C. and don't care what we think because, they're going to only maybe listen to the Democrats, but not us. But Concord is easier. As far as policy in New Hampshire, we could affect it. Going back to House Bill 628 last year, I saw the article. I saw the bill. Someone posted on my Facebook, probably some libertarian state rep posted it, and I read the bill, and I saw, well, it's a new tax, and I saw it could pass because it has the keyword, it's for the children. So I realized it's dangerous, it could pass. So I wrote an article about it, and then AFP caught on a few months later, NHLA caught on, and a few others caught on, and some good Republicans started fighting it. And then after, right before the Senate vote, when it passed the House, right before the Senate vote, Sununu sent a decent letter to the Senate saying, hey, I can't support it as is, so please kill it. So that was one example of what we could do in New Hampshire. Liberty Block, so that's me. It's really just me. My family helps a tiny bit, my friends help a tiny bit, but it's like 99.9%. I'm just trying to run it, and I work 60 hours a week, so I spend what little time I have I spend on it, and little money I have I spend on it as far as boosting on Facebook. But that article I wrote, the original article I wrote about House Bill 628 is an income tax. It's a payroll income tax, which is the same thing. That article, I boosted it for like a total of $50 over the first few months during the whole fight of when it was passing the House. Over 17,000 people saw it come across their Facebooks in New Hampshire, and that's like a few percent of the elected registered voters in New Hampshire. So that's a massive impact. And just realizing what an impact I can have, and did the bill fail because of me or because of AFP or because of NHLA or because of the LP? I don't know, but did I play a bit of a part in it? Probably, because 17,000 people saw my article come across their newsfeed at some point. And I only target New Hampshire because New Hampshire. So you got to figure almost all of them, 90% are in New Hampshire. So that's that's more than 1 or 2 or 3% of registered voters in New Hampshire. That's incredible. So if 1 out of every 1,000 actually got on the phone with their state rep or emailed them, that's still an impact. That's 17 people calling and emailing their state reps. That's a big impact. So that's very encouraging.
Yeah.
Because I'm pessimistic. I'm always pessimistic about this stuff, even on a state level. But that was very encouraging, seeing that one article I wrote about it really reached over 17,000 people, and then I wrote 10 more articles about it as well. And another state rep who's pretty libertarian wrote an article, and I published it. I republished it on my site. So just seeing what an impact we could have on state politics, because it's also local and close, and because of the way our legislature is set up with the 400 state reps and the public hearings for every bill, it gives us a lot of good tools to keep New Hampshire free. And that's why I'm optimistic about New Hampshire.
Yeah. Pretty cool. I like it.
Yeah.
So, I think this is a fun one. So, I forget if we talked about it on this, but earlier we kind of discussed how New Hampshire is one of the more free states, correct?
The freest state.
The freest.
I don't care what Cato says about Florida.
So, pretty much the freest state out there, as compared to the other ones. What can we do to make it better? Because this is always fun, because saying it's the freest state doesn't mean it's completely free.
Perfect.
It just means,
yeah,
instead of having all 4 limbs tied down, we have 2.
Yeah. You're right. Yeah. Fantastic.
So how do we do to make it even better? Take that next step.
If you're asking what's on my wish list for legislation to pass in the next session, that I've already worked on some of the bills.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a lot about police accountability. As I became from conservative, who always supported police, to libertarian, and realized, police are not infallible. They're not all angels. In fact, of the 1 million cops in the country, maybe a few 100,000 or 998,000 are actually evil and violent. So seeing a lot of videos and a lot of stats, I've kind of seen, a lot of them are pretty bad, so they need accountability. They need to be accountable. They can't just murder and rape everyone. They should be punished, maybe. That's what I was thinking. And Brailsford case and a lot of the other cases made me realize they walked free after murdering someone. So I've written a few proposed legislation, proposed bills for police accountability. I have a few articles on my site. If you go to on my site on libertyblock.com for the tag, I'm learning how to use tags.
Yeah.
So on the website, on the bottom of the article there are a few tags, and one of them is police. Or right now I named the tag law enforcement. Click that, and you'll see 10 articles come up, 10 or 20. I've written a fair amount on police reform. One of them is titled 7 Reforms That Would Fix Police. And it's a pretty serious article. I do bash law enforcement sometimes, and I think for good reason, but this is a pretty serious article about 7 reforms that would help them and help us and help society and help communities like them more and help everyone work together better by also restricting the kind of stuff that they could charge people for and prosecute people for and punish us for. That article I wrote. It was also a show when I was back in WGCH in Connecticut, so I guess over a year and a half ago, I made one whole episode on the show, one radio show about police accountability. And towards the end, I said, hey, I have 3 reforms that would kind of fix policing. And then it evolved in the article. By the time I published the article, it was 7 reforms. So 7 key reforms. Among them are making the police officer, they're going to hate this one, making the police officer themselves responsible for financial damages and paying. So currently, right now, if a cop walks into this studio and beats the living crap out of us and maybe kills one of us, my family's going to sue them, and they're going to probably settle for $12 million, right? Because they killed us, right? Who pays that $12 million?
Yeah.
Where are we? Bedford right now?
Yeah.
Yeah. The Bedford police, meaning the Bedford taxpayers, would pay that. Was that cop punished? No, it's not his $12 million. He doesn't even carry insurance for liability, does he? So the Bedford taxpayers are punished. So some rogue cop was high on PCP, beat the crap out of us, and killed one of us. And who's punished the most? Me, because I died, my family, right? And the Bedford taxpayers, they're punished.
Yeah.
I've seen so many of these. Again, I've bookmarked hundreds of these cases of a cop kicked a man in the chest and broke some bones. $800,000 settlement. Who paid it? Not the cop. So I think maybe they'll be less likely to use violence, to use excessive brutality if they know that they're on the hook for it. And what's going to happen naturally? Again, we both understand spontaneous order. Things develop naturally as required, right? Within 1 day of that law passing, if my dream law passes that makes them accountable and not the taxpayers, within 1 day, what's going to happen? We're going to have a whole market pop up of insurance, right?
Yeah.
So me as a medic, but more so every doctor has to carry insurance because they know malpractice, right? If you're sued and you settle for $8 million, no doctor has that kind of money in his pocket. They have insurance, malpractice, they pay up to a few million. For me, if I'm sued as a paramedic and I make a mistake and I hurt a patient, if I'm sued for up to $6 million a year, my malpractice insurance I pay will pay for it and no harm to me. And that's fine, but at least make the cops pay a few bucks a month for their insurance, make them realize that it's them. And stop punishing taxpayers.
Yeah.
If a cop beats you up, why should the taxpayers pay? A cop beats you up, and me being one of the taxpayers, I should be up. Why am I paying? It doesn't make sense.
So not only do they beat you up, you have to pay them for it.
Yes, you pay, that's what I'm saying. You and all your neighbors pay for it. So they beat me up, and my neighbors and I have to pay for the settlement. It doesn't make sense. And I've seen so many of these cases. There was a study. I'll have to look at the article after this, but there was in New York City over a span of 3 years or something. There was millions, or maybe hundreds of millions, paid out in these settlements in New York City. But every city has this. They have a lot of settlements because cops, they hurt people either intentionally or otherwise. But they should be responsible or have insurance for it. So that was one of them. But also one of the reforms was just totally abolish victimless crimes.
Yeah.
If I'm going to be in my own house smoking any kind of plant I want in my own house, the cops shouldn't be bursting down my door to kill me. It's not good for anyone. It's not good for the person because, it's a damn plant. And just so the audience knows, I'm like the biggest opponent of marijuana. I've yelled at half my friends, smack the joint out of their hands, smack it out of their mouth, smack cigarettes out of their mouth. I think, besides for air, which is 78% nitrogen, 20% oxygen, nothing should be going in your lungs. There's a reason, certain things go in your lungs. Put in smoke, you're going to have a bad time. But the government shouldn't regulate it. I don't think the government has any business doing it. If you want to smoke, do what you want to do. You know what? I eat cheeseburgers. You're choosing to die of lung cancer or COPD. I'm choosing to die of heart disease. We all have choice, right? I'm pro-choice. See, there you go.
And that's the point. I think this is actually a really good point that we're making right now. And this is something people have just seemed to have lost over time. It's just because you're against the government regulating it doesn't mean you're for it.
Yep.
So, I think this is a huge conversation that comes up. I'm kind of derailing here.
We need to do a whole 10-hour episode about this issue.
And then because freedom of speech comes up all the time here, where people are like, "Oh, racism." That's the huge one. Everyone's talking about it. I don't support racists. Do they have the right to say it? Yes. And is that controversial? Sure. People are going to hate me for it, and if you do, shut up. Don't watch my show.
Yeah.
That's the point. But that's something people are just lost.
Yeah. So, and I've spoken to so many smart people who I respect about this issue, about there are two worlds. And whenever I have a debate with someone, which is all the time because I debate a lot, I try to at least ascertain whether we're talking about legislation and laws and actual law and use of force by police and crimes, or are we talking about, is it a good idea to do?
Yeah.
Right now, ask me, I'm a medic. I've been in emergency medicine for 7 years, since 2011. I know what COPD is. I've probably had over 1,000 patients with COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. So you smoke for a long time or you're around a lot of bad air quality, you generally get COPD at some point over a few decades, and it's, it could be worse or it could be more mild. But should people be able to smoke if they want? Should people be able to do whatever they want? Yeah. I mean, I think people should be able to do whatever they want as long as they don't murder someone. Don't murder, don't rape, don't steal. That's all. It's that simple, and that's what we used to have 240 years ago in the Constitution. But so there's a big difference, and people debate me. No, well, all the weed is bad, and I'm like, yeah, and smoking's bad. I'm like, yeah, they are bad. Smoking's legal, alcohol's legal. Things that are killing the most people in the country. Heart disease, the top killer, cancer and heart disease, right? The two top killers. There's nothing illegal of all the causes of cancer and heart disease. Nothing's really illegal. The top causes of cancer, cigarettes and the other stuff, and the other bad things we do with our bodies, and probably the cell phones and everything probably causes cancer, but it's all legal. Heart disease, again, I know what heart disease is. I've had thousands of patients I've treated over the last 7 years with heart disease. Cheeseburgers, I know what cheeseburgers are, man. It's so simple. I eat cheeseburgers a few times a week. Should it be illegal? If we're going to ban things that are bad for people, we need to ban cheeseburgers. And I told someone this a few weeks ago on the show. If we're going to ban things that will be dangerous for people, the first thing we need to do is get rid of cigarettes, because they cause the COPD, the lung cancer, and the heart attacks and the strokes, because actually they make your blood clot a lot more as well. So they kind of hit every point. So cigarettes are like one of the absolute worst things for health and humanity.
Yeah.
But they're legal. So whenever I have a debate, I try to ask them, hey, all right, dude, are we talking about legislation? Because then I don't support it. Are we talking about, is it a good idea, or culture, or what should you recommend your friend do? Let's talk about that. If you're talking about as a friend, I say, hey, buddy, don't smoke. You're being really fucking stupid right now. Don't smoke. If you're talking about legislation, it should be legal. Are you hurting anyone else? Are you smoking in a baby's face out? No. You're in your own house. Do whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
But you know what I've found? That question that you just asked me, almost all of my most respected, my smartest libertarian, conservative friends cannot make that determination. They can't separate the two.
Yeah.
My mother, no, all the drugs are bad. They need to be illegal. I'm like, yeah, drugs are bad. A lot of drugs are really harmful for various reasons, but they shouldn't be illegal. No, the drugs are bad. They need to be illegal. I'm like, no, they should be. The police shouldn't break down your door and kill you for it, because in New Hampshire they're going to get shot back at, and then they all neighbors get shot too. It's a bad time. But again, on a personal level, I tell my friends and everyone, don't do drugs. Don't do any of this stuff. But legislation, I don't support it. And that distinction is so damn difficult for people to grasp. And that's what we need to work on. We need to make people realize there's the voluntary side of things, where me on my personal level, when I'm not in the state house, I tell people, hey, please don't smoke. I explain to them what COPD is, lung cancer, the heart disease, the stroke, the pulmonary embolus, DVTs, all the risks, and just, the bad cardio, you can't run. My friends who are big smokers, they try to run 10 feet with me, they can't do it. It's sad. It's really, really sad. And it destroys your lungs, and you will get COPD eventually. So I tell them that personally, but then in the state house, when it comes down to actually making a law, meaning passing legislation, people think legislation is a good idea. They think if it passes in a bill, people will say it's illegal, I won't do it. No, that's not how it works. If you pass it in a bill, you're saying, I support the use of force by police, city or state police, to come into your house and bring you to jail or kill you if you do this. That's what people need to realize. And I think Larry Sharp, this is one of the first videos I saw of Larry Sharp, and when I started liking him, he said this. He said, we need to make people in society realize that passing a new law, saying we need a law about this certain thing, or passing new legislation, means I am willing to send police to someone's house to bring them to jail or kill them if they resist for this. So think to yourself, how important is it? You think weed is bad? How bad is it? Are you willing to send police to someone's house to kill them for it? If the answer is yes, then support the bill. If the answer is, well, maybe not, they don't deserve to die, it's a 17-year-old smoking up, they don't deserve to die, then don't support that bill. That's what we need to make people realize. Same with taxes, right? The FMLI bill. Mm-hmm. It was going to be an increase in 0.67%, so almost 1% of the payroll tax.
Yeah.
So for every 1% of payroll tax means for every $100 you pay your employee, you got to give $1 to the government. So that adds up over time, of course.
Yeah.
Are you willing to support that increase? So much so that if they don't pay, you're going to send police to their house to drag them away or steal their money or throw them in jail or kill them? Mm-hmm. It's not worth it. Think about use of force, and that's why, as voluntarists, as libertarians, as anarchists, whatever you want to call us, we believe in consent. We believe in property rights, use of force, self-ownership, the non-aggression principle.
Yeah.
You can't be aggressive and use violence to steal someone's money, because theft is essentially a violent crime because you're taking their property by force.
Yeah.
You can't do it. You can't initiate force. You can only defend yourself. You shouldn't initiate force ever, and you shouldn't take anyone's money ever, even if you voted on it. And, even if you're going to spend it on a good thing for the children of the roads.
Yeah.
Can we talk about dominoes?
I'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
Now, this actually brings up, again, kind of a sidebar, but it's something I've gotten in little debates with professors over this before and blah, blah, because we've gone over the Constitution and all this stuff, and this comes up. So we talk about the non-aggression barrier. You're not supposed to hurt someone, take their stuff, anything like that.
We learned it in first grade. We all learned it, right?
Yeah. But it's funny when you read the Constitution, part of the Second Amendment is, when the government steps out of line, the people, they need to replace the government. And
that's written in the Declaration, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wherever that shows up.
Yeah.
So this becomes an interesting point when, especially now with libertarians and all this stuff, because we want freedom. The government tends to overstep itself, but we have something in place again where we're not supposed to harm people.
Yeah.
How do you go about fixing all this stuff? Because we're getting to a point where it's so corrupt that, as you said earlier, there's no fixing this. We can't do anything about it. The only way to go about it would be to rip it down and replace it. But at the same time, you can't hurt anybody.
Are you asking how I reconcile the non-aggression principle with ultimately revolution?
Because essentially, I was a soldier. I've been on the battlefield. I understand that type of thing. And even as a libertarian, I would be fine picking up arms to overthrow the government if they step out of line too far.
But what is out of line too far? How do you assess that?
That's the question. How do you go about, where do we even, this is a conversation people aren't willing to have. What's too far? Is them coming for our guns too far?
That's a great question, and I'm glad you asked it, because a lot of, depending on how conservative you are, or libertarian or anarchist, depending where you are and everything else, people say, and you're right, it's such a good question, because I thought I was the only one who thinks of this, because so you have right now maybe 100 million or 80 million self-identified conservatives in the country, and if you ask them about the Second Amendment, most of them will probably respond with something to the effect of, the Second Amendment was written into the Constitution by our wise founding fathers with foresight, so that we can defend ourselves from tyranny should the government ever step out of line and become tyrannical. What does tyrannical mean? These conservatives are essentially saying, not yet. They're not that bad yet. They might steal 50% of your income, which they do. 45% of my income was taken last year by the government. Mm-hmm. They might not give you property rights because you can't do anything on your own property. You got to pay property taxes. You have zoning laws. You can't build a goddamn shelf in many states in your own house without a zoning permit. You can't do anything without permission. I'm sure you've seen the memes. Name one thing you can do without permission. You could blink. You could take a breath. Everything else you need permission for. You need a permit or some kind of permission, or there are laws governing it, or pay a tax on it. Almost everything we do, you got to pay tax on. You buy a new thing, pay a tax on it. You go somewhere to eat, pay a tax. You drive your car, gas tax, toll tax, this, that, all the taxes, parking taxes, the meters, like we were saying.
Yeah.
So, people, a lot of conservatives will say the government's not there yet. They're not tyrannical yet. But if they step out of line, yeah, I'm a badass. I would totally fight them. Would they really? Yes and no. You never really know what's in their heart, but would they be smart to fight them? Probably not. I mean, you're not going to fight the whole U.S. government and U.S. military. But it's a very good question as far as what is too far.
Yeah.
But also, how do you reconcile it with the non-aggression principle?
Yeah.
In general, let's talk about the NAP first. Now, and I was just thinking about this the other day, because I think about it from time to time. The non-aggression principle, right? We know the basics of it. Don't initiate force. Non-aggression principle, don't initiate force on someone. If someone throws a strike, you can block it and maybe retaliate, right? How long after the fact can you retaliate, in good conscience without violating the NAP? If I block your punch, can I punch you back a minute later?
Yeah.
What if you start walking away, maybe? Can I hit you back then? Is it still self-defense? If you're leaving the scene? Legally, it's not, right? But what if you're going to get a gun?
Yeah.
So I was thinking about this, like the NAP is not as clear as some people will make it think. It's not that clear.
Yeah.
If someone comes into my household and rapes someone in my family, if I can kill him the next day, I'm gonna kill him the next day. Right? You should kill him the next day, right? And that's still self-defense, or is it retaliation? I don't know. It's a tough line, I think. But as far as the government, ultimately, theoretically, should we be able to reconcile to our conscience potentially killing people who are politicians, who are tyrants, who are traitors to freedom, traitors to the Constitution? Should there be an issue with people killing them? As far as the NAP, there shouldn't be an issue. Does self-defense on a broad scale work? I can make the argument that it does work. It's not a physical punch to my physical face that I'm blocking, but self-defense as far as they are currently stealing 50% of our income in some cases every day. They're currently telling us what to do on our own property, which violates property rights. They're currently actually killing us. Some police, some law enforcement, some other government agents are killing us. They're actually there's enough violence in there. I think it should be reconciled. But I'm curious what you think about that too. And I'm curious, having been in the military, do you think ultimately when things do really get worse, like a lot worse, like they say everyone with a firearm will have it confiscated the next week, and they send the U.S. military along with the National Guard and Coast Guard and everyone else and local law enforcement, how many, as far as U.S. military, how many would actually obey that and how many would disobey it? After Katrina, they sent FEMA and National Guard, right? And I think some state and city cops, but FEMA people, National Guard, and meaning U.S. military, and police. I've seen very, very few disobey that order to confiscate guns after Katrina in New Orleans. Very few disobeyed the order, right? Most of them complied without hesitating and confiscated guns from their own American citizens, right?
Yeah.
And what do you think about the military right now? How many would obey that order?
It's incredibly tough. So you get stuck fighting against one. Our training is to completely obey.
I know.
So they're like completely obey.
There's a reason they train you like that. Yep.
So we listen and you do your thing, especially when you're in combat. So you listen to orders, right? So,
but domestically, how hard do you think it is to get over for soldiers domestically, going against their own American citizens versus disobeying orders, which they're trained to always obey their commander?
So this is a very fun question. So a lot of this is going to have to do, I think, has to do with political climate. So we're in a place now. So it's going to depend on how we utilize the forces. If Trump turned around and said, we are going to use the military to take care of all the liberals in California, right? The government being considerably more conservative would have much less problem with that.
But take care of, do you mean take care of in a good way or in a bad way?
We'll say bad.
Okay.
So we'll say worst case scenario.
Like put them in a camp like the last great liberal did with California people?
Yeah, so we'll say that. So it'll be much easier for them to reconcile that because most liberals hate the military regardless, right? So, and a lot of your soldiers are going to be like, okay, they're getting rowdy, Antifa's acting up. They could probably justify doing that. It might be a little harder if they were like, yeah, we're going to go to Texas and start doing stuff because they're like, oh, they're a bunch of liberals and they're much more conservative. So there's going to be a lot of scenarios there. Because I was in the military. I've sat around hours because we have nothing to do, talking to other soldiers who are like, if they ever try to mobilize us against civilians, they're gone. Like you also have a lot of people that would just, I think it would be a pretty hard split. Some of them would stay, and a lot of people would abandon. But you also have a lot of veterans. Like, there's millions of veterans in the country who, again, it could go either way. Where they would side with the military because they want to obey the government, or they would side with the people because the government's stepping on a line. And I think a lot of it is going to have to do with the current political climate, because if Democrats keep doing what they always do, which is tell conservatives how evil they are, they're not going to get any help from the military. And
I think they'll be smart about it. Like, just imagining if in 10 years from now they have to mobilize the U.S. military for whatever reason, they're not going to say, hey, soldiers, we're going to go in and we're going to confiscate the firearms and throw them all in camps and kill half of them. They're going to prep them with whatever briefing they do for the whole military and say, hey, listen, here in New Hampshire we have an uprising of crazy radical right-wing nationalist, white nationalist extremists. They're violent, they're kind of terrorist organizations. You know how they would do it? And then a month later, when they actually deploy them, they have the mindset of people like you and me in New Hampshire are kind of extremists, which people consider us extremists. They would say we're kind of violent, or white nationalists. You see, New Hampshire's so white, they're really radical terrorists, and they would I feel like they would help the soldiers justify using force because they're violent, potentially radicals.
Yeah, what I'm saying is, it's going to have a lot to do with the media, and this is the danger that it comes down to, and it depends on the message that gets across, because like I said, there's a huge force of veterans in the country that, if mobilized against the government, could go toe-to-toe with the government for quite some time, because as we've learned from Afghanistan, Vietnam, a small insurgency can do a lot of damage against a standing military, and they can hold their own for quite some time. But soldiers are more attached to other soldiers than they are to the government itself.
Interesting.
So I don't know how many of my my buddies I've talked to about this who are like, they absolutely despise the military. They miss the people we served with.
Yeah, of course.
So
sense.
And you would get.
I hate my job. I love my coworkers. Yeah,
absolutely.
That makes sense.
And it's like that with the military too. So if all of a sudden you have a huge force of people opposing the government, they were all like veterans, other soldiers would be like, we don't want to fight against other veterans, especially if publicly a case could be made. Maybe whoever stands up and it's like the official leader of whatever rebellion was like, we don't want to hurt you, but the government's stepping out of line. Here's the point. Join us. Because Napoleon did this back in the day. He turned an entire army to his side without spilling any blood, because he was able to make that argument. So it's possible. It's possible to do, but can it be done? So, but it's also a conversation people aren't having.
What would you say as far as federal but state and city law enforcement? Would they be more likely to obey because they work more directly for the government, or less likely to obey because they haven't been trained like soldiers?
Again, that's tough. A lot of law enforcement were military.
Yeah,
there's also a very strong connection there too. I don't know. I think it's at the end of the day, it's going to be each person has to decide, do they want to be subservient to a government, and can you make them see your vision of what's wrong with the country? Because if we stood up and were like, we're going to take down the government, but that government was completely liberal, Democrats would be like, and they would lose their minds. And vice versa, if the conservatives were like, they're trying to kick out a conservative government to replace it. So you're going to split the population regardless, so it's going to depend on which forces seem to be correct.
I think the country and I think the military is kind of getting smart and becoming wise to the government really being authoritarian. They've seen right and left and Clinton and Bush and Trump, and I think a lot of the military people I talk to who are current military and veterans and really everyone in the country is realizing, because of the media or Project Veritas or other stuff, or because of just the way media is now so accessible with Facebook and everything, a lot of people are realizing that the government is actually, I think they're leaving the duopoly of conservatives good, liberals bad. A lot of people are realizing, wait, everyone working in DC is pretty evil. They're pretty authoritarian. They probably want authoritarian fascism, communism. So I think people are getting wise to it, which is a good thing. So that's my pessimistic side. That's my optimistic side. I'm usually pessimistic, but a part of me thinks that because of the accessibility of media and the way social media works, I think a lot of people in the country, again, if you go around it with a poll and you ask every individual in the country, do you trust the government? Or do you think the government's doing a great job? I imagine 99% will say, hell no.
Yeah.
So that's the good thing. But the problem is, how do we translate that feeling into implement that?
Yeah.
Because libertarian, freedom, conservative, anarchist, it's all based in not trusting government, right? Thinking we have the audacity to think we could run our lives better than they can, right? And Reagan said this, we can run our own lives better than the government can run my life because I know my life better. But how do we make people realize that and translate that the will of people to run their own lives and implement that?
Yeah, I think one of the bigger issues here is there are political factions in movement to try and swing power in their favor, and this is my biggest thing where everyone hates Hitler, rightfully so, but they give a hard slide to communists, and they're like, oh, communism, socialism, all these things, these are fantastic things, when they've killed more people than Hitler ever could, so
hundreds of millions.
Yeah, so you're dealing with a political group that, like you said, everyone wants more freedom,
but they're being tricked. That's what it is. They're being tricked.
Yeah, but each group has a different idea of what freedom looks like.
Yeah.
One group is I want guns, I want all my stuff, I want freedom of speech. The other group is, what I don't even know the liberal standing points. The abortion, and they want to. I don't even know their platform that well, other than
it's based on pretty much equality and the false promise of what prosperity would be, because everyone has a good quality of life, and they kind of try to convince people that that's freedom as well, and they say, well, you want freedom with no taxes and no social welfare, people can have the freedom to even send their kids to school and eat food, and then you can't be free if you're starving, and that's what they say.
Yeah.
So therefore we need 80% taxes, 50% taxes, and a lot of laws, and then the government can make sure we're all equal, then we can all have the freedom to be free, and that's what they say. But again, they're being tricked. The way I think that the government, the leftist movement in the country, the Democrat Party is convincing so many people, so many millennials, so many American voters that socialism and communism is good, is because, and it's so easy because they control almost all of education in the country on every level, from federal down to state and city school districts. The left controls it. They control media. Is it 80% or 60% of media? They control media. It's CNN. They control social media. They control the TV, the social media, some radio. They control a lot of print media. They control a lot of media. And just, we can do a whole show on Facebook and Twitter what that is, but you can really help to guide policy, as we saw a little bit with the Zuckerberg hearings. If you suppress that a little bit and you uplift that a little bit, you can really affect the billions of users on Facebook for what they see. If they don't see that conservative article and they see that leftist article, maybe of the billion readers, 500,000 will be convinced, and be convinced 500,000 people. So it's very powerful also. So they have almost all of the education. They have a lot of media. They have a lot of other institutions as well. They kind of have the courts. They have They have Hollywood. So Hollywood, all the shows, all the Netflix. I call it Leftflix. They have the movies. From all of Hollywood and media, all of media, as far as traditional media, social media, and education. That's almost every institution that raises our kids, right? What are you raised by? The TV you watch, your school, the movies, the media around you, the TV. So it's all these things, and that's how they help to, sometimes in a subtle way, but sometimes they just say, hey, socialism is great. But they convince these people and they poison these kids in the schools. And I've seen it in my schools in New York a little bit, of making them think, capitalism is bad, capitalism, they're cronies, they're bad, they're evil, like in 1994. The capitalists with the big black top hats, they're evil. And they convince people that socialism is about equality, and there are the big people out there running off with all the money, and they're hoarding all the money under the mattress, which is, it's not true. They don't do it. It goes to banks, and they actually loan out and they help people, and they hire millions of people, like Jeff Bezos, the evil guy, hiring how many millions of people.
Yeah.
So they don't hoard the money. People think it's a zero-sum game. They don't hoard the money under the mattress.
Yeah.
It's
always my funniest thing. They're like, this person's a billionaire. Why can't they, use their money for other things? I'm like, because they have the money and they put it in a bank account, and then the banks use that for other shit. Like, they don't have it on them.
When you buy a house and a car, that you're getting a loan from a bank. The bank only has that money because evil people like Bezos keeps their money in a bank.
Yeah.
And Bezos is hiring, the big rich people hire millions of people.
Yeah.
If the Liberty Block becomes massive, we'll hire people.
Yeah.
Aren't jobs good? Every right-wing and left-wing politician says jobs are good, right? So one thing they agree on, jobs are good.
Yeah.
Conservatives say we support small business and jobs. Democrats say we support small local business and jobs. If you support jobs, you should support people being as rich as possible. Walmart, they're very rich. Yeah, big evil Walton family. They might be leftists, but they probably are. But they hire millions of people. They give me great cheap products. Why not let us be happy?
Yeah, then there's a whole nother skew of why they hate Walmart and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But yeah, it's just no, everything has a little bit of politics in it, and
Yeah.
people aren't willing to go down that road. But oh man, so any other things you want to talk about? We've been going at this for like an hour now.
Oh my God, there's so much. We could do a 10-hour show. I want to talk about Domino's. I love
yeah,
Domino's.
that's right. We were on that earlier.
I've been having Domino's almost every week on my Wednesday shift. My partner and I get Domino's. Big pizza and a big chicken. But nowadays, we really like doing it because we're supporting the roads. So I wrote an article about this as well, about paying for pizza. When I heard about Domino's paving the roads and fixing the roads, I was so excited. So just in short, for the people who argue with libertarians or don't know libertarians, one of the biggest arguments is that without government, without high taxes and socialism and government programs, who would pay for the roads? And libertarians generally respond with, if people want roads, they will pay for it. Either companies like Domino's or people or communities individually, people will pay for the roads. Don't worry about it. In fact, where you see the most government, the highest taxes, you see the worst roads. Like New York City, the highest taxes, DOT budget of $1 billion a year, they still have the worst roads in the country because they just don't care, and because of the unions. Anyway, Domino's a few months ago unveiled this new program that's I guess in trial stages, only doing 4 cities right now in the country, but they're fixing the roads. Domino's, and they came out with the whole commercial, the whole campaign, saying their whole paving for pizza campaign, and what they were essentially saying is that their delivery drivers, when they bring pizza to people's homes or when people have carry out and they drive their own pizza home, by the time the pizza arrives at the house ready to be eaten, it's all jumbled up and mixed up in the box because of hitting all the bumps on the roads. So they figured, we want pizza to arrive decently and not in a crumpled mess of cheese and sauce and bread. Let's pave the roads. And they've been paving roads in 4 cities, and I wrote them in my article, and it's on the website. 4 cities around the country they're starting, and their efficiency numbers is incredibly astounding compared to government. You have the DOT in New York City, $1 billion a year, a few hundred million goes towards paving potholes. They pave 3 potholes a year, and they're so poorly done they got to redo them next year. You look at the efficiency numbers of how many 40 potholes they're filling in like 8 hours. Incredible what Domino's is doing because they're hiring private, contractors. So they're fixing the roads. Go to pavingforpizza.com, I believe, and you can nominate your own city. I nominated Manchester because we have crappy roads. So it's incredible. So nowadays, when I'm at work or something and we hit a big bump with the ambulance, massive bump, and our patient gets hurt, now they're screaming in pain. I tell my partner, hey partner, expect me to get Domino's later and support my roads.
Exactly, I like that.
Yeah.
And I had a very similar thought when I saw the commercial. I was like, my wife's like, what? And I'm like, I've been telling you. And, again, the biggest argument I get from a lot of people is, libertarian ideals aren't being enacted. I'm like,
right there, it's enacted.
We try. Like, they're trying. Like, every chance they get, like I think I use this example all the time, it's hard to give out a bunch of money when it's being taxed away. You have to do well enough that you have a lot of extra money. If we didn't have so many taxes, you'd have more money to do stuff with, right? So, and that's one of the big things is they are, even in this crazy-ass market, people are trying to enact things that are libertarian ideals.
Yeah, voluntarism works.
Yeah.
And even though people have 30, 40, 50% of their income taken, like I had 45% of my income taken last year from the government, people are still giving charity. I've given charity, but I'm not the most charitable person. I did volunteering, but I don't give a lot of money to charity, but I give very little. But in America, those greedy capitalists give over $370 billion a year in charity. And that's with half their money being taken by the government. Imagine how much charity would be given in the U.S. if the government didn't take any of our money. If we had no taxation. It would be in the trillions.
Yeah. And I'm not a big charity person, but I put a lot of money into small businesses because I deal with a lot of small businesses. I sit down with them all the time on the show. And when I find one, I'm like, that's really cool. I give them a lot of money to
support
help
them in various ways, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't do, I do some private charities, but a lot of times it's working with small businesses and, taking their products in and all that stuff. And of course, I could do more if we had more money. I could do a hell of a lot more.
If I had back the $20,000 the federal government's already taken this year, if I had it back in my pocket, I could give half of that to charity, $10,000 to charity right now.
Yeah.
We could give more if we had more, but the government steals it, and then they give it out in various horrible social programs, and then they say they're the generous ones.
Yeah.
They steal our money, give it out to others, and say they're generous.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Exactly. And I think this is one of the biggest probably logic fallacies I run into all the time. People so the minimum wage thing. This comes up quite a bit. People are like, we need a $15 minimum wage. And I'm like, 5 minutes ago you told me you want to tax people more. We can tax them up to 50%. What you're actually saying is you only want to pay people $7 an hour, plus $7 an hour in taxes. Like, you can't keep telling me you want to increase wages and increase taxes directly alongside or more so than that. I'm like, why would you do that? I'm all for raising wages, letting the companies decide that, and then reducing taxes, and you actually free up more damn money.
Oh my God, we got to do a show on the minimum wage sometime together too, because I've written an article about it, but I want to do a show on minimum wage also, because New Hampshire has no minimum wage, right? So it's the federal minimum wage in New Hampshire.
Yeah,
there's no state minimum wage.
Something, yeah.
So it's like $7.25, the federal, right? Yet New Hampshire has the highest median income in the country. How is that? Because we have economic freedom.
Yeah.
But I love the minimum wage. It's so beautiful because the higher your salary is, the more you make per hour, the higher brackets you are. So there are 7 brackets, and your first 9,000 or so is taxed at a certain percentage. Your next 9 to 18,000 is taxed at a higher percentage, and the more you make, the more higher brackets you're in overall. So when you're making $15 an hour, you're paying higher taxes. So you make $7 an hour, you keep most of it. You make $15 an hour. Yeah, you're only in a slightly higher brackets throughout your 2-3 brackets that apply to you, but if you listen to what Bernie Sanders wants, which is 50% or maybe even 90%, like he said, 90% income tax, but even just 50% income tax, if you're in the 50% bracket overall, then you make $15 an hour, $7.50 goes to the government. You keep $7.50 anyway. It doesn't help anyone, but it helps the government. They make more money. They get to sound like they're all righteous because, I passed a law. I helped you get $15 minimum wage. I'm righteous. No, I'm just stealing more of your money. Yeah. They make off like bandits, yeah. That's why it's a slam dunk ideology. It's a slam dunk policy for them.
Yeah.
They get minimum wage. They sound good. Yeah, I'm raising wages. You still have the money by taxes because you tax more the higher the income, and everyone's happy. It's amazing.
Yeah, and they literally tricked people into thinking that's the correct thing to do. So I was telling someone this last night. I'm like, I wish as a salesperson I could be like, no, give me your money. Here's your product.
Yeah, and it's so bad. I mean, and like here at 725. So if they actually pass the $15 minimum wage, like the Democrats are campaigning on, Molly Kelly and everyone campaigning on that for governor, right? If they actually pass that, that means that the people who are making minimum, which again we have a good economy, so most people, very few people are making minimum. But let's say someone's making $7 an hour. If they have to be paid $15 an hour, that means that by definition their employer has to lay off half of the workforce.
Yeah.
If you're paying 10 employees $7 an hour, and now you have to pay every employee who exists, every employee you hire, everyone you employ has to make $15. You have to either raise prices by 200%, twofold, make your dollar items now $2, meaning you're going to lose sales, meaning you're bankrupt, or fire half your workforce and make the 5 remaining ones work twice as hard.
Yeah.
So you're losing jobs. People are working harder. You just laid off half the workforce. Congratulations. It's such a horrible policy. So bad.
Yeah.
It's incredible that it still has any validity according to anyone.
Yeah. And what I've been seeing a lot in New Hampshire, which I love, this makes me laugh. So instead of hiring a workforce, like me, for instance, if I need someone to do my taxes, I have an accountant. It's a separate company that I work with. So instead of hiring all these people into a company and paying them a forced wage, you literally just shop other companies and you have these almost Lego blocks of little groups of companies that get the job done, but now we're kind of like little pseudo companies, and so because people are getting around it, because instead of hiring employees, they can be like, okay, I'm gonna go work with this other business, and together,
you can say you're a private contractor, or you can do other stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, people are always going to find a way around paying dealing with these laws, of course.
Yep. And it's like,
and you have automation.
Stay out of it.
The higher the minimum wage, the more automation, because it makes more sense to build a robot for a few bucks than pay $15 an hour forever and ever and ever.
Yeah, and that's the marketing side of my business is geared towards that. Because it's essentially an entire self-contained system that goes out, finds clients, and brings them back in, hopefully as paying customers. You don't have to pay a salesperson. You don't have to pay their hourly. You have to pay their commission. It's literally just a set monthly rate. It goes out, comes back with customers, and you're done. And it's all about automation, and it's about eliminating as many, literally almost needless jobs, so you can just run the place yourself. So it's insane. But yeah, I mean, we could literally do this all day, and we're probably gonna have to do it again.
Yeah, literally.
So,
absolutely.
We've been at this for a little over an hour now, so I'm gonna call it here. So people that want to learn a little more, reach out, talk to you. How do they get hold of you?
LibertyBlock.com. We have a very big presence on Facebook. That's pretty much all social media we do. It'll be facebook.com/thelibertyblock, I believe. But yeah, libertyblock.com. You'll find our Facebook there. You'll find our podcast there. All the videos, everything else. We do a lot of other stuff. We do a statist of the month. So every month we'll try to highlight the worst statist in
I
here.
love it.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what it. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you very much. It was a lot of fun. I'll have to come back soon.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you all had fun. These ideas are definitely mine. If you're offended by it, don't watch my show. Thank you all so much. Have a great day.